Well, joining us now here on the show is Luke Mullin. He's a sports reporter for the Lincoln Journal-Star. He's going to talk a little Nebraska Cornhuskers here. Hey, Luke, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Look, lots to talk about here. Let's start here with football. Year two of the Matt Rule era. I think if you look at this and your former athletic director, we'll talk about in a moment here. We talked to him last fall and he was saying, I hope this experiment works. I think year one, you would say, will be a success.
Yes and no. I think if you look at where Nebraska was, in the years that preceded Matt Rule, there were a lot of, I think, really significant improvements last year in terms of strength and conditioning, in terms of team mindset, a lot of the different behind the scenes stuff that was going on. But when you talk to folks here in Lincoln, here in Nebraska, they remember how well they started the season, and then you lose a few straight there to end the year. Heartbreaking one score losses that you miss out on a bowl game once again, kind of the same track record that Nebraska had shown in years prior. So there were still some aspects, I think, of kind of the Scott Frost era, some of those different missteps that were still needing to be flushed out. And I think last year they did a really good job at that. We've seen them kind of overhaul the roster a lot. So I think in that regard, there has been a ton of progress, and folks still here, they're waiting for the wins. They're waiting for the on-field success that proves that process is really paying off.
So in the off season, what acquisitions and what was done to help close those gaps? And do you think Coach Rule has started to do that?
Well, you can't look at anything other than the quarterback position. I mean, it's got to be right up there. Last year, they took a swing in the transfer portal. They went for Jeff Sims, and that experiment really failed very early into the season. They were very quick. They had to move on, evaluate some other options. And, this offseason, they go in and they were interested in a transfer portal quarterback, weren't entirely sure how Dylan Raiola was going to shake out. He was committed, of course, to Georgia at the time. But they could not be any happier with what Raiola has shown in his first few months on campus. Just seeing him throw the ball, the way that he interacts with his teammates, the way that he leads offensive meetings. I mean, he's a leader there as a true freshman, early enrollee, 18-year-old kid, has all the talent in the world. And of course, they brought in a new quarterbacks coach, Glenn Thomas, too, to work exclusively with him. He is experienced in the NFL, really talented quarterback trainer. And it's just been an overall, I think, offensive focus. They brought in a lot of different transfer portal wide receiver targets as well. Jamal Banks, he's expected to be the top wide receiver on this Nebraska team. Had a really successful career there at Wake Forest. So there's been a lot of focus on eliminating turnovers, getting this offense humming, and of course, making sure that the quarterback play is much, much improved from last season.
Yeah, talk about Raiola. I mean, to get a legacy kid was huge. Here's somebody who was living in Arizona, commits to Georgia, moves to play for an Atlanta suburban school, the football power Buford High School down there, and then decommits, winds up in Nebraska. He has to be amazingly impressive. You never hear of a true freshman going into camp as the number one. I mean, is he gonna be the starter on opening day?
Yeah, so Matt Rule, he's been very, he's an old school coach. He's not going to go out there say, "Hey, we're starting a freshman." Let
Right.
everybody run wild. Say whatever they want about this kid. So he's been very much from the mindset of, "Hey, Heinrich Harburg, he's a junior. He started from us last year. He's going to come in, get those first team reps." But I think anybody around the program, the expectation is certainly that from what Rail has shown so far, they're going to have a competition. That's what they want. They want to have that competition in fall camp, as all coaches do. But I think people kind of see the writing on the wall. You see the talent that Raiola has, just how he's going to be able to progress this offense, the ceiling that he has, and some of the limitations that Heinrich Harburg showed last year, just as a passer. He's a fantastic runner, good dual threat quarterback for the system they wanted to run. But again, with Thomas coming in, they're trying to tweak that offense a little bit. These systemic changes that they're making to be a little bit more pass heavy to fit Raiola, everything is certainly trending towards that direction. Yep.
Looking at the schedule this year, is that Colorado game with Deion, is that one that people are looking at? Obviously, old Big Eight type of game. Is that something that fans are really pointing towards, especially with Deion being, let's say, extremely quotable?
Absolutely. I mean, it's huge. The Nebraska Colorado rivalry, it's always been, going strong. And certainly you look to last year's matchup and to when they met a few years before then, even before Deion and Matt Rule were there. I mean, there is a ton of animosity between these fan bases. They're fans, flipping people off on the field, people yelling at each other out there in Boulder. I mean, it was a crazy scene last year. And that was a big noon kickoff. It was 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Like people were going crazy out there. Everybody here in Lincoln has seen, hey, it's going to be a nighttime kickoff. People are already saying, it's going to be one of the most electric atmospheres Memorial Stadium's had in a few years because, hey, there's not really been these type of marquee matchups, a winning Nebraska football team that gets a big rival, big opponent coming in. So there is a ton of excitement from that perspective. And from an on-field point too, I mean, Shedeur Sanders, he carved up the Nebraska defense last year. He was phenomenal, the best quarterback that Nebraska played last year. And the defense is supposed to be the strength of this Nebraska team. So that will be a huge test early in the year to see how the secondary stacks up and can they slow down Shedeur.
Talking with Luke Mullin, sports reporter for the Lincoln Journal-Star. We mentioned earlier that there's a change at the top of the athletic program. Trev Alberts, a legend in Nebraska football, Nebraska athletics, had come in and done a fantastic job in Lincoln. Moving on to take the job at Texas A&M. What was that like? That the moment when he left home to go down to College Station, and what has the transition been like now since he left?
Everyone was stunned. That was the reaction because I think there was kind of maybe this mindset that Trev Alberts, he's an ambitious guy. A lot of people, a lot of us in the media, we felt, oh, he might not be here forever. He has long-term aspirations. Maybe wanted to be a conference commissioner. He was exploring kind of the college football playoff job when that opened up. But there was this idea that he's here in Nebraska. He wants to overhaul this athletic department, see this job through to completion. That was really kind of the mindset that was around the program at the time. So for him to completely jump ship, just hired new football coach a year ago, extended Fred Hoiberg, the men's basketball coach. I mean, there were several really big decisions that he had to make. Announced a big new renovation plan for Memorial Stadium. I mean, there were all these different indicators that he had these long-term visions that he wanted to execute, and had the staff, everybody around him, kind of the atmosphere that he wanted. And as a former Nebraska player, he had the entire support, I think, from this fan base, from the state. Prior to him leaving, I don't think he would have had many folks saying bad words about Trev. Maybe some minor things here and there, but his decision to bolt for A&M, obviously that's done a complete 180 on his reputation within the state. People were upset because, hey, you can't talk about, overhaul, rebuild and not see that project through to completion. It's just a very weak move to leave that up to somebody else. But I will say what Troy Dannen has done stepping in and taking over as that new athletic director, stability was right away his main goal that first week. That transition, people were freaking out, and he was very good to calm the storm. And again, see what Trev had done, maybe put his own spin on things, but he's not come in and completely shaken things up. He's brought in some of his own personnel, highly regarded people from other athletic departments around the country. And I think the really big thing that Troy Dannen has done in particular is he looked at that Memorial Stadium funding project and said, maybe we need to hit the brakes on that a little bit. All this NIL, all the different aspects of this modern college football era that's going on. And he said, I don't know about that right away. That's a very seismic thing for a new idea to handle, but people are very excited with what Troy Dannen has done so far.
Were there any takeaways from Trev leaving? Was there anything that could have been done differently or better? Or was this just one of those things when bags of money drop on you, you just got to kind of catch them and run?
Yeah, there were some discussions about kind of the leadership system of the University of Nebraska system. Prior to Trev leaving, the president, Ted Carter, he moved to Ohio State, and him and Trev, they were very, very closely aligned. And Carter, he was actually a big reason why Matt Rule came to Nebraska. After all, they'd previously known each other, I think, from back in the American Conference days. So there was kind of this idea that leadership had been aligned. That Carter, he was there to support Trev, and Trev was there to support Rule. Carter leaves, Albert leaves, and suddenly there's kind of this vacuum of power. There was an interim system president for Nebraska that was at the time, and very quickly, that stuff can happen. You don't have a boss to go to your concerns. So I think people felt that maybe that was a factor in Albert's decision. But I think, as I alluded to, I think the bigger thing was just Trev's long-term ambition and, taking that A&M job, big time SEC program. I think he saw it as a step up, an opportunity to continue furthering those connections all across college athletics and just have that next step to his career.
Yeah, Nebraska has, very loyal and and generous boosters. But Texas A&M, I think we all know they just, literally the bank vault is open for whatever they want to do now. I mean, they're about to double their baseball stadium and the coach leaves.
Absolutely.
That's another topic. So many great things happening right now with the Huskers. You mentioned Hoiberg's extension, obviously Nebraska volleyball. The countdown is 7 weeks away until they start. Baseball team just won the Big Ten. But I do want to talk about NIL before we let you go. There's this. You mentioned NIL and the money out there, and teams programs are trying to figure out how to now carve out these millions of dollars because of the House settlement. How's that playing out right now in Lincoln?
Yeah, I think people are pretty pleased with how Nebraska's NIL operation is going at the moment. I think like many schools, we saw kind of early in this NIL era, it was very fragmented, several different collectives, several different organizations, all kind of going for the same goals, but maybe doing it differently, different leadership, different ways. And eventually it all kind of got branded together under one umbrella. There's a main collective in Nebraska right now, the 1890 Initiative, that handles all of the university's athletic department NIL deals. But it's worth noting, as we talk about these athletic director changes, it has been a big shift there under Troy Dannen. Trev Alberts, he is very much a pragmatic AD. Understood the need for NIL and for a strong relationship with the main collective of 1890, but he's kind of a behind the scenes guy, like, hey, let's let this process run out and see what happens. Well, Troy Dannen comes in and immediately he understands NIL is how you're going to get a better football team out there on the field. And from one of his very first moments, he said, hey, I'm going to be wearing 1890 branded apparel, which was kind of like, really? Like to us as the media, like, hey, like you're the Nebraska AD, but that's how much he sees into the future of NIL that, hey, this athletic department and this collective have to work hand in hand to get the best football team out there on the field as possible.
Have they carved out, or do they have an understanding in the budget where that 20 to 22 million dollars is going to come from to potentially pay the athletes as part of the agreement that the House has put into place?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not entirely sure what the financial makeup would be there exactly, but I will say the Nebraska athletic department is in very strong shape. They do turn a profit annually as a result of this football program. The volleyball program is actually profitable, one of the only women's sports nationally. So really kind of the football's long-term success, they've been very smart, I think, in their long-term financial planning, kind of with that idea in mind that, hey, we're going to need some money for something down the road.
Yeah. Hey, got about 30 seconds here. What would it mean for Nebraska to make the 12-team football playoff?
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be incredible. It'd be an entire generation of Nebraska fans that have never experienced that level of success. It'd be, a complete justification that what Matt Rule has done is correct, that he was the right coach for the job, that all the talent acquisition paid off. And I think you look at the coaches, the entire coaching staff. Yes, it's a long way away, but they do have that long-term goal in mind. They're high achievers. They want a conference championship. They want a college football playoff, all that top stuff. And that's the reason that I think Nebraska fans have a lot of hope in this Nebraska coaching staff.
Yeah. Help me out. Was it 2002? Was it the BCS game in the Rose Bowl, lost to Miami? Is it the last title game appearance? Am I drawing that right?
Might have been 01, but I'm not entirely
Around that,
sure.
yeah, but it's
Yep.
been more than 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. They're due. Big Red is due. All right, Luke. Hey, we appreciate your time and insights. Great stuff. Hopefully you'll join us again soon.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Luke, have a great summer. We will talk to you here in a few weeks. Luke Mullin, once again, he's a sports reporter with the Lincoln Journal-Star, telling us all things Cornhuskers right now, and big things happening in year 2 on the Matt Rule administration. All right, Big Sports Radio. We've got more to come after this.